Greetings, Raise community. Brent coming in live with today's guest, Shomari White, who serves as Senior Associate Vice President of Resource Advancement at Emory University. Welcome, Shomari.
Thank you so much, Brent. I'm so happy to join you today. Very excited to have a great conversation.
So if some of you are watching on video, you're seeing that Shomari's bringing it with the blazer today, which he said is not his typical vibe. So he's taken it to the next level for the Ever True Raise podcast, which we really appreciate. But Shomari, I've been looking forward to this because I feel like I know you pretty well. We have had the opportunity by way of your leadership at AASP originally and our participation, many memorable years, usually in Chicago at that conference. And so I feel like we've had lots of chances to interact and connect also professionally in your day-to-day roles as well. But you're also one of the people that when I think about how much time we've spent together, it's always been about kind of the present and the future. And I don't think we've ever really talked that much about why you're doing what you're doing, who you are, where you came from. And so I have been looking forward to this opportunity. And what I've been asking a lot of our guests on the Race podcast is just to tell me a little bit about your own higher education journey. Take me back to junior year of high school. Who was that Shomari? What was he into? And what led him to Howard University?
Sure. And it's a very interesting sort of background. I'm originally from the DMV, as we call it, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. Born actually in Georgetown Hospital in Washington, DC, but grew up in Prince George's County, the best county in the world. Of course, we're biased. And so Prince George's County, for those who may have heard of it, Kevin Durant is from Suitland, Maryland, which is in Prince George's County, which started my journey in high school. I went to Suitland High School of the performing arts. So really started into music. My parents started their own church, Baptist church. And so I grew up really early on, really seeing how important it was to serve the community. My mother also worked on Capitol Hill for Congressman Louis Stokes of Ohio, the first African-American congressman in the country. His brother Carl was the first mayor of Cleveland. So I sort of grew up really thinking about how we can help our community, very strong needs of African Americans primarily, but then going to Suitland, Performing Arts High School, I was able to diversify my friends, see how important it was to really learn at an early age that we're all different. And it's important for us to cherish those. And so then I began to broaden my thinking about how to improve the entire community. And so performing arts was my outlet. And then I started actually at Howard University, going to a junior program to learn how to perform and that sort of stuff. So
what kind of performing arts can mean different things? What were the specialties here?
I know you're gonna. So I was a singer. Did music.
No. I am a singer.
Oh man, I'm taking that. I'm taking that mantle off. My son has it now.
Is that why karaoke has always been a strong part of the AASP culture? It's all making
yes. You would be surprised, Brett, how many of us in the advancement universe started off in performing arts. You would just never guess how prevalent that is in our industry. We're always on stage. We're always trying to influence. We're always trying to create experiences. You've heard, and the experience comes from the experiences we create, really, whether it's Broadway, bands, music theater, all of those things. So really from an early age, really got excited about singing, about performing, about acting. And so that's really where my high school career moved. I will tell you, certainly it's a competitive environment. And so going to Howard, I decided I had a decision. Either I was going to go performing arts, I was going to go to business. And so not really having the confidence necessarily to compete at the highest level, ergo going to Broadway and that sort of stuff. I thought business was a good place for me to land. So started off going to Howard for performing arts in the junior program, but then ultimately decided to go to Howard for business. It was right around the corner. I'm very close to my family. And so it was an easy choice to go to Howard for business. And that's where my career began to take off. I had an internship in the government. I had an internship on Capitol Hill. So again, going through that service sort of lens to learn how important it was to help folks. My first real sort of foray into philanthropy was working in the grants and contracts office. And so my job was actually sending forms to the states or those nonprofits in the states that were getting grants to get them to actually fill out the information. So grants and contracts, OCP, Office of Grants and Contracts, is sort of where I started a little slight foray into nonprofit, and that must have been probably my sophomore year in college.
Got it. And so, I mean, Howard has an amazing reputation just around alumni affinity in general, and I think the homecomings or reunions got a pretty strong reputation. And I've had actually a bunch of recent Howard connections. Erica Jordan up at Boston University is a Howard alumna. I just had the chance to host David Bennett, who leads advancement there now, and so we've had a lot of Howard connectivity recently. But tell me just about your student experience. Like, did you feel that vibe and connectivity right away? Did it take some time? I mean, just overall, how was it for you?
Yeah, I had a really strong connection to Howard, obviously being originally born in DC, and really my grandmother lived in DC. So I had a real connection to the area and really felt like I was going to school at home. It just continued my journey in the area, really. And so my connection to Howard was really starting off. I couldn't let the music go. I did the gospel choir. And so we kept going. And really sort of the yard, as we call it. There's lots of movies, whether it's A Different World, lots of TV shows, Different World movies, really tried to capture the experience of a Howard. And I lived it. We had stars, we had folks in the entertainment business come there, because obviously we have a long history of great entertainers and great musicians who had been there, and they would come to the yard, come and encourage some of us who were interested in the arts, give us some best practices, and most importantly, in some cases, things not to do in our careers, and sort of pitfalls to avoid. So Howard was really a family environment, and a lot of alums, which I think is really, really critical, came back to the school to actually mentor, and in some cases bring their companies, bring their businesses, so that we have an opportunity to intern. So it was a lot of activity, a lot of support, and a lot of excitement and energy on the campus on a daily basis.
Love that. And tell me about, as graduation approached, historical interest and passion around the arts, went and studied business. Where did that lead? What was the early career trajectory?
Yeah, I'll tell you honestly, I sort of waffled a little bit. I sort of struggled a little bit going in the School of Business, really being excited about that. I really enjoy communications as well. And also my mom was working on the Hill. I built those connections. I was working in the government as an intern still at the Department of Health and Human Services and grants and contracts. So I did that my entire career. One of the things that's sort of challenging when you're trying to do service sort of jobs, you don't get paid very well, right? Even going on the Hill, also not being paid very well. So I struggled with wanting to do the service, but also obviously trying to make a living as a struggling recent undergrad. So I started off, left the government. I was offered a job there. I did some consulting, which has also helped me quite a bit at a place called Maximus, which is a government contracting, and also managed a big grant. So again, grants was sort of in my life It felt like a good, it paid a little bit more, so that was fine. And then I was offered a really nice job in banking. So I tried that a little bit because I was also a great salesperson, loved marketing, loved communications. So did that. And then decided that I wanted to potentially go to law school, went back on the hill because I thought that would help me sort of go into the government. So again, going to the service, sort of a consistent theme, although I sort of jumped around a little bit early in my career. And then once the congressman I worked for retired, I was at a crossroads. Did I stay on the hill, go to law school, or did I try to do something different? Well, fortunately, and this is where the tech and the data and all of that orientation comes to play. I was fortunate to be accepted in an executive training program at Bell Atlantic at that point. And so for those of us who are a little older, we remember that there was Baby Bells, there was the Monopoly and all of that sort of stuff. So I actually, in which I really learned about professional development and the importance of management at a very early age, because at that point, 24, 25, I started an executive training program at Bell Atlantic, merged into Verizon, training, education, data, marketing, communications was really part of my job the entire time. During the merger, and speaking of conversions, this is really my first foray. Bell Atlantic was using PeopleSoft, GTE was using SAP, very two different financial systems. So I was tapped to be on a lead a program, a project to look at both of these data sets, create a new database so that we could see the revenue and expenses of these two behemoth companies in one sort of central ledger. And so that was my first foray to saying, oh, this data thing is sort of interesting. It's sort of curious about how I'm seeing chart of accounts here that have very different logic, but need to talk to each other. Sounds familiar? So that was my first foray to sort of saying, hey, I could go with this data technology and reporting thing. And so really exciting opportunity at Verizon. And that's where I really cut my teeth on the technology and data and analytics side.
Well, I got to say, having just brought together 4 or 5 different companies over the last 12 months at Evertrue, when you're talking about getting the ledger and the chart of accounts all reconciled, I'm a little bit it's too soon for me to be having that conversation because we're kind of in it right now. But I can totally empathize with that. I will say though, at this point first of all, I've hosted over 150 advancement leaders at this point. Very few, I think, make it as far as you made it in your career without yet pivoting into this career path, if that makes sense. Where you had, most people, it seems like they somehow uncovered or discovered advancement, engagement, something along the way in college, pivoted their way into an entry-level role. Maybe they were able to go straight up at the alma mater. Maybe they had to bounce around at different institutions, but not too many people were working in your case, kind of the wireless, revolution that was happening at that point, doing merger and acquisition work, and then finding this sector. And so when, and then much less not only finding it, but going on to lead, by way of your volunteer work with AASP, one of the key professional bodies. And so I'm just curious kind of how you stumbled maybe back into the world that we're in now.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey. So taking it off from Verizon, once the merger happened, the project of merging these accounts happened, then it's what's next, right? The merger's done. We've completed this sort of conversion of data from PeopleSoft and SAP. So then it became what's actionable with that data. And what was actionable with that data wasn't necessarily a pretty picture. It showed a lot of duplication, a lot of ROI loss, P&L losses at some of the centers. So then it became my job to then go and assess some of these centers. to see exactly what was happening with management, what was, and really do some assessments, which weren't pretty. And so my job became closing offices, which I did not like. A lot of times with a technology company, it's about stockholders, stakeholders, return on equity and those types of things. And those are really tough decisions. And I didn't like that. I didn't want to go fire people. I didn't want my job to be about closing offices. So I had finished grad school at University of Maryland. Of course, the consistent trend of the DMV, DC, Maryland. And so at that point in time, after finishing grad school, which was paid for by Verizon, thank you, I decided I wanted to go back to my roots. I wanted to do service again. I wanted to do something that was going to improve the community and that was going to improve the lives of the folks that I cared about in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. And so Children's National came calling. Children's National Medical Center in Washington, D.C. had an opening, had a lot of transition, and they were looking for a job. They were looking for a position to be filled called the director, I think at that point, development services, right? Sound familiar? And so the foundation had been raising a little bit of money, had a great leader, but thought that they could raise significantly more. And my corporate background really helped me. The fact that I had sales and marketing meant that I could actually identify with the fundraisers and what they were trying to accomplish. I had a lot of data and technology experience that I built through that conversion project. And so I was the wild card candidate with no nonprofit experience directly, hadn't worked in the nonprofit, as you mentioned. So it was a really interesting hire for them. And I have to say thank you to John William Thomas, my boss at that time, who did hire me for really taking a chance on a very young manager to really lead the turnaround that he was looking to achieve.
So there could be a risk in that setup where you had just done all this technology work, the M&A work, the finance work, the MBA, where you could come in a little hot to an organization like that. And so how did you sort of calibrate just taking the time to learn and understand the business of healthcare fundraising, for example, and fundraising operations, versus just wanting to dive in and make an impact in a big way right away? I mean, how do you, what was that experience like?
Yes, I will say I did come in hot initially because I'm the new guy. I want to be make change. I'm being hired to be a change agent, essentially. I think what was really important for me was twofold. A, to have that management professional development that I received at Verizon. I think training and education and being a good manager, there's a difference between being skilled and being a great performer and then being a great manager. And I think you have to have both of those, but the management piece is really, really important to really manage yourself, have some emotional intelligence, understand when folks are really buying into what you're saying and when they're not, and how to make sure that you're navigating those gaps. I think also having a mentor and having folks immediately gravitating towards a mentor. If you're in a position or in a situation that you're not aware of, chances are, if you have a great circle of mentors, they can help you navigate, and that requires some humility and also some transparency when you don't know something to ask the questions. So I had a lot of that going into it, and then really looking for an association or a body because I had so much professional development experience at Verizon. My first probably 3 months was looking to see what association, what group of organizations could I learn from, and what other institutions are doing are doing parts of the job that I'm trying to learn about. So I really did a really big outreach phase. At that time, there was no ASP, really sort of tried to reach out to my contacts to understand exactly what they were going through and how could I learn from them.
And you spent 13 years there. Very few people have a 13-year tenure, ever. I mean, it's just rare. And so clearly that meant there was the right kind of mission alignment, the right kind of professional opportunities. What do you love about your time there? Just tell me what kept you there for that long.
I had a lot to learn. First off, I was able to start off originally just managing the database, gift processing, budget, finance, and administration. And during my time there, I was able to learn and grow. I was able to demonstrate through training and education with CASE. I then began to manage on an interim basis donor development, which at that point was corpse and founds, direct mail, online, which was very fledgling at that point, annual giving. So I had an opportunity to grow and expand my territory and to learn about different parts of the business, which was really important to me. And then grow. I had a great leadership team, great leadership there. My boss, John William Thomas, his successor, Pam King Sams, was there pretty much the entire time I was there. So we had some stability there. She hired Judy Graham, who became our COO, and we all stayed together for the most part, the core group during that time. So that stability, that relationship, that ability to learn and grow all parts of the business while growing in my career was really, really critical. And so it was a great, great opportunity, and I really enjoyed my time there very, very much.
Given that a lot of your work and focus was around, right, systems and tech and data and process and just making sure, right, there's a foundation to the foundation, basically. But at the same time, you're working, I mean, we talk about impact and mission, anything around children's healthcare, it's like you just like start crying. I feel like I'd be crying all the time because the stories are just inherently extra emotional, right? Anytime kids are involved. And so I'm just curious, like how you balance just, how did that team stay connected to that mission? How do you kind of showcase the impact of the patients and the families as part of an operation like that? Because I gotta imagine that's part of what really keeps the team going and energized and pushing.
Yeah, I think the key question is how do you keep dry eyes?
Yes.
You're kind of seeing the videos and you're really experiencing. I spent a lot of time actually at the hospital originally, and I had the tough job of moving the office out of the hospital into a satellite, which was a very difficult move, especially as you can imagine for the frontline fundraisers, because we were on site, we had immediate access to the hospital, we were connected to the mission, and then I have to move, a significant office out of the hospital and put them 15, 20 minutes away, but it's a drive. And so you're no longer there. And I'm also managing to a certain extent donor relations, and that team obviously was pretty disappointed about the move. I think what's really, really important, or was important for us, was to create opportunities for us to continue to tour, continue to be engaged, to have meetings and sessions over at the hospital, to really keep us really connected. It certainly wasn't optimal as being on site, but I think you have to be really strategic and intentional to make sure that your team is really plugged in. At that point, we had done some really creative videos, had our physicians do thank yous to the staff when certain events and certain programs happened, to keep us really plugged in. At the same time, we were also building a race called the Race for Every Child. So really connecting us to DC, having the race in DC, and really continuing to have programs, events, and opportunities to connect the staff was definitely a strategic initiative for us, and really, really worked well. I think we all, no matter at what point we were at Children's National, we're all still very, very, very connected because of the work that we did together.
Tell me about the time at CHOP, another amazing organization, amazing mission.
Yeah, so
But a move out of the DMV.
yes, Philly. Shout out to Philly. So, Children's Hospital Philadelphia has a real special place in my heart. Philly is absolutely a fantastic city. Um, I really enjoyed the location of where I was able to work, which is called the Wanamaker Building. For just a little bit of history, it's one of the first, if not the first, sort of clothing stores in the country. A lot of history there in Philly. And so, really, because I really drank the children's pediatric fundraising Kool-Aid, it was very easy for me to take the CHOP position. It's really going from, if you think about the sports, and I'm a big sports fanatic, it's going from, number 10 to number one, right? And so it was a big step up. It was a significant, exponentially larger organization. The team at that point, I had an opportunity to really build a team from scratch. I have a sort of an architectural mindset. And so being able to be an architect to what is still a really great team was an experience I could not pass up. And so really DEI and going through COVID and all those things with that group was really not only professional growth opportunity, but really mentally and emotionally, I think building some toughness, building some strength, and continuing to really learn and grow while building the team was really a great experience for me.
And during this period, those last two roles, outside of work, right? One of your side hustles was AASP leadership, the Association for Advancement Services Professionals, and several of my Evertrue colleagues have been involved for a long time. Other friends, from the sector. And what's interesting about AASP is I feel like it's one of the rare bridges between healthcare and higher education advancement in particular. I know there are other nonprofits that would be represented in the AASP community. And so I'd love to just know a little bit more about your experience with AASP, what folks should know about AASP, but then also, why isn't there more connectivity between healthcare and higher education fundraising? Are there fundamental differences, or is it maybe more similar than people might realize? So let's start with, just the involvement and then get into some of the similarities and differences.
Yeah, that's a great question, a great topic, which I'm pretty passionate about. So in Children's National, being there, starting with CASE, trying to learn, trying to grow, trying to extend my network, there was still a little bit of a gap there that I found, and obviously others did too. And so John Taylor and the team was, in their wisdom, established and created AASP. And I immediately drank the Kool-Aid to go to ASP just to learn and grow, just to understand as a neophyte to a certain extent in this business, what did I need to know? What is best practice? How did my team need to be structured? What are the policies? What are the practices that we need to know about? And so, again, understanding the importance of elevating a community, I thought it was important as I was learning that others should learn as well. So I brought my team along and then my network, and then I became a really strong volunteer, first on the marketing and sponsorship front, because that was the area of expertise that I had being a volunteer there. And then getting on the board, being the treasurer. From my perspective, if you're in the industry and your business and you're professional, you really need to obviously elevate the position that you're in and the team that you manage. But let's look more broadly to the universe, the industry in which we're operating in, to elevate the industry and other professionals that are around that may need a mentor, may need to learn. So I drank the ASP Kool-Aid right away. Obviously, when I started, higher ed was the focus because it was created out of a gap, I think, in CASE. But then as other healthcare, other children's hospitals began to learn, There's a children's hospital consortium called the Woodmark Group, which are the top 25 pediatric hospitals in North America. And so I started getting folks at CHOP, others in the country in Woodmark to come to ASP to learn and to share experiences. And in fact, we had a Woodmark sort of group meeting there at ASP. So that began infusing more healthcare fundraising and more healthcare organizations in ASP. So we went from sort of 90 to 10, 90% healthcare, 90% higher ed, 10% healthcare, and sort of gone to maybe right about now 70-30, something around that. Obviously, shout out to the other institutions and organizations that comprise outside of healthcare and higher ed, but pretty much we began to infuse some healthcare in there, which was very, very important to me, obviously, based on my position. But I thought also to your question, also allowed us to begin to see how higher ed and healthcare are aligned in some ways that we might not consider or think about, and how do we learn from each other, although we're different, obviously, but there are some synergies there. So that was exciting.
What are the similarities and what are the differences? I mean, now, you've obviously been near educational advancement by way of the ASP work, but you really have been a healthcare fundraising professional up until your current role at Emory, which we'll talk about. And so you've got little time under your belt. I mean, what is the exact same? What is the biggest difference?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, raising money is raising money. I think when you think about fundraisers and the moves management cycle, going from 1 to 5, and I drink that Kool-Aid. I think a structured fundraising approach is really critical. So I think as we think about moves management and how to determine at what point a proposal is needed and the solicitation process, I think is fairly the same. I think that those are fundamental practices that I think can be shared, vetted, and assessed, that I think are very similar. I also think that when we think about engagement, is also a lot of similarities in terms of, join, lead, attend, give. Certainly going to a football stadium where you're seeing your team from your school is different than going to, an event where folks are trying to raise money and raise a paddle and that sort of stuff. But both of them have components of that latter event where you're going to an event and you're raising a paddle and that sort of stuff. Probably a lot more prevalent on the healthcare space in terms of the different type of events. But in terms of the strategic mindset that you need to have approaching those different experiences, there are some real strong synergies there, because ultimately you're moving someone up the ladder of engagement, up the ladder of moves management. Those are all fundamental strategies that I think you can employ in both areas. So when we look about our systems, we don't have moves management for higher ed or moves management for healthcare. They're all part of that 1 to 5 continuum.
Yeah,
I think that those are shared similarities. I think the differences are many. I think the donor mindset, as you think about why an alum gives to their university versus a grateful family, are very different, and need to be treated and engaged in very different ways. So I think the approach, the actual execution, are very different, and because the donor mindset is very different. So I think that's probably the biggest difference. Their motivation, how they see themselves in that institution at a higher ed institution, is very different than a grateful family and how they see themselves in healthcare. So I do think that those are very different. One has a very different pace about it. There's urgency in healthcare, and naturally, because it's a life or death situation. Folks are potentially giving because someone has been saved or someone has left and they want to make sure other families don't experience that or have a better outcome, or they want to give in testimony to someone that they've lost. So it's a very different sort of conversation because the mentality, the mental state of that donor, I think, is very different.
Yeah, I mean, look, I ask all my guests, hey, where'd you tell me about your experience going to Howard University, right? It's a part of your identity. It's on the resume. I don't ask, tell me about the hospital that you attend and why you went there, right? Like that's a very different sort of part of our lives and something, that's compartmentalized. I'm always struck by probably the difference in pace where, let's say for the most part, every year we graduate a new set of alumni and some people pass away and then everything in between. But you've got this sort of 40, 50, 60-year life cycle to get to know people. And sometimes it happens when they're 21 and they never stop being engaged. And sometimes they're ice cold until, until somebody reads the will and everything in between. And so, whereas with hospitals, like literally every day, you're graduating, you're taking in a new set of students and graduating a new set of alumni. And sometimes it was a 24-hour experience. And so it just strikes me that the pace is very, very different. And I wonder how much, that to me is an area where it would seem like data and intelligence and qualification and trying to figure out, when are we going to actually try to have a discovery conversation versus just let the patient discharge process happen and, they move on.
Yeah, I think there is a window, a very window that that can close very quickly, to your point, on the healthcare side, where you just want to sort of immediately determine the scenario and make sure that you have an immediate response. I think both of them really require that, but the pace in which you sort of, depending on the severity of the issue or depending on the outcome, can vary. I think on the higher ed side, you still want an immediate sort of communication, but in many instances, as you say, that could take over time. You want to sort of get them in the engagement ladder, probably it could take a little bit more time. On the healthcare side, there's urgency, there's immediacy, and to a certain extent, because it's more of a service as well, to make sure that people have an opportunity, in some ways, to feel better about their experience because they have a way to help. A lot of times in the health space, if you're sick or a loved one is sick, you're helpless. You don't have an opportunity to have an outlet. And I think a lot of times philanthropy, from what I've experienced from donors, it's an opportunity to help, to control, to really demonstrate some sort of input into life. And that's a pretty significant thing that needs to be done, I think, urgently, immediately. And I think that's a very different mindset, a very different pace, to your point, of one cycle versus another. The difference between getting a daily screening, daily feed of grateful families, daily screening of what's happening in the hospital versus the higher ed space, where again, you might have a more regimented sort of screening as you go along.
Yeah, sometimes you hear we're going to update our whatever, we're going to do a screening every 5 years or something like that. Whereas in healthcare, it seems like it's got to be every 5 hours. Otherwise you might, miss somebody. So you had the opportunity then to move down to Atlanta and join Emory, obviously an amazing educational institution, but also I think most folks recognize an incredible healthcare operation as well. And so a pretty natural maybe blend to bring together those interests that were straddled at AASP in that community. And just tell me about that experience. And I had a little heads up from Josh Newton right before you were announced, and I was super genuinely happy for you and for him and for the team.
Yes, Josh had me at hello. It was great to meet him and to talk to him. I'd always wanted to have a higher ed experience. Obviously, being president of an association, ASP, that was and still is around this 70% higher ed, having lots of close colleagues and friends that were in the higher ed space. It was always something that interested me to actually work in a higher ed space. I am a healthcare ambassador. I really believe that it's urgent and it's important that we have philanthropy in healthcare. It's a life or death. Literally, in my mind, I think that philanthropy has already changed the landscape of healthcare in so many different ways that I wanted to stay connected to healthcare as well. And so I had a need to move to Atlanta because my son was moving to Atlanta to pursue his musical pursuits. And so it just all aligned at the same time. Emory had an opening. I needed to move to Atlanta, and it just really came together. I must say it was a very difficult choice to leave CHOP because I had built in 3 years a really best practices operation, I believe, with great team members that I recruited and built. But Emory in Atlanta was such a great opportunity that it all fell together, and I was really excited to take the job.
I love it. I love it. And I have to now ask you about fatherhood and that experience, because a couple of months ago, and I recommend everybody, connect with Shomari on LinkedIn and mention the podcast, and then scroll down a couple months ago, there's just an absolutely amazing post where, I mean, you tell me the setup. I mean, it absolutely brightened my day, and I know thousands of other people felt the same way. So I can't imagine how you felt. What's the story?
Yeah, now the video's at 11.7 million on his Instagram page. So it went viral, which was really cool. Very surprising sort of scenario. So moved to Atlanta because my son is a musician. He plays lots of instruments. He's a singer. So he's sort of Usher, Chris Brown, that type of music. Would be lovely if he got to that level. Certainly rarefied air for sure. But we moved down to Atlanta. He's been pursuing his musical career. He signed to Interscope, LVRN. For those who know Summer Walker, that's a reference there. So basically, same company. And so essentially, we had been trying to go through a marketing strategy, marketing plan. And so he invited me out to dinner and said, "Hey, come downtown. Let's go to dinner. Let's talk." So I came downtown. He said, "I got a surprise for you." I was sort of skeptical, said, "Oh, surprise. Okay." So he put a blindfold on me, and I looked up, and it was his picture on a billboard. And what you'll see in the video is my response to that, which was a father's dream. Certainly, it's a long road and a lot of hard work. And my reaction is being a proud dad of someone who's seen someone from 2 to now 19 achieve something that was pretty cool.
I love that, man. I love it. And we'll try to figure out a way to include a link or the clip here in the video version. Really, really special, and something I know you'll never forget. That's super exciting. But I got to now ask you a little bit about your own, content pursuits, maybe back to the performing arts. I'm catching wind that there might be a new sports podcast featuring Shomari.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'm a Renaissance guy. I have lots of interests. I really enjoy my day job, but instead of hobbies, as most folks have, I'm going to do my podcast. So I'm a sports fanatic. I told you early in my career, I waffled. One of the things we didn't mention was going to Bristol, Connecticut and being on ESPN. So those who watch ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, that sort of stuff, I drink it all up. I'm a big sports fanatic, both college sports and professional sports. And so I decided now is the time. I've been talking about it for a few years. I have a partner, Austin Oles. We're going to do the Shomari and Austin Top 10 Sports Show. It's going to be a weekly podcast of the top things in sports that we think, and we're going to chop it up. And it's a very easy conversation because I love sports. And so I'm really excited to have that podcast. We're going to start and launch it a Super Bowl weekend. That'll be our first podcast, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm pretty stoked and pretty excited about it.
All right. Well, it's January 20th as we record this. We're in the midst of the NFL playoffs. We got the Super Bowl the weekend of February 12th, I believe.
Yes, sir.
What's your call? What should we know? And by the time this publishes, the answer will be clear. So
I waffle. I must admit, I am the anti Stephen A. Smith, meaning I'm a Cowboys fan. You know, it's gonna be rough. I don't know that they'll get there. I'd love to say that they would. My current pick right now is the Bengals and the Niners. Joe Burrow to me is the best quarterback in the league. I know that's probably not shared by everyone, but I do think he's right in the middle. He has all of the traits that all the other quarterbacks have in various doses. He puts it all together. They should have or could have won it last year. They know that. Anyone who saw them play the Rams knows that. And so I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals get it done this time. That's my prediction this for the day. So we'll see how it plays out. The Niners are very close there too, so I wouldn't be surprised. I'll put the Cowboys third, and we'll see how it plays out. But that's my prediction for now.
well, I would say you heard it here first, folks, but you will have heard a lot between now and when this actually publishes. But I like the call. I like the conviction. No waffling. That's great. And so when is that podcast going to be? Have you started recording yet? What's the game plan?
Yeah, we've done our demo. We're developing our YouTube page, putting it all together. We've already started analyzing the games up to this point, getting ready, essentially a dress rehearsal for us really putting it out and broadcasting and marketing it for Super Bowl weekend. So it's all in process. I'm really excited about it. It's easy for me because I watch the games. I love it. You have a passion, much like I have for my day job. And I think when you have a passion and energy and you enjoy it, it's all fun. It's not work. It's fun. It's what you want to do.
I love it.
It's like being in a barbershop and talking about something you want to talk about. And that's what we're able to do together. So it'll be exciting.
Well, tell me about just when you think of peers in the community, right? This is a tight-knit sector you've worked in, and you've been a part of some of the industry bodies. I mean, who are you, some of your friends, colleagues, folks that you have really come to respect over the years?
Yeah, that's a pretty long list. When I was at Case, Vicky Medlock was one of the first people, Lynn Becker, John Taylor, John Thorson. They saw me walking around Denver lost at a Case conference. I didn't know anyone. I went into Denver, didn't know anyone, first Case conference. Again, that was in my first year of being this director with no experience in nonprofit. And so they saw me walking around because I was thinking it's dinner time, it's maybe 7 o'clock in Denver, Colorado. And they said, "Hey, would you like to join us? You look a little lost." Lynn Becker, "Hi, you look a little lost." I'm like this little pup walking around trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Didn't know anyone. And they took me out to dinner along with Tom Chase. Shout out to Tom. And so we went to dinner, and then Gail Ferris also was there. And so we went out to dinner, and that really started my journey of having friends, building my network. And so they have always been strong mentors of mine. Anita Lawson, now Wayne is one of my, Wayne Combs, who is the former president, still on the board of ASP. Was at USC, now at CHOC, Children's Hospital of Orange County. I had him drink the Kool-Aid too of coming to pediatric hospitals. And certainly I'm very, very plugged in with the board Mark Walcott, who works with me at Emory, as well as Jessica Laborde and her husband, who works at BWF. And I've had lots of great experiences of meeting great friends. And then really one of my best friends and sort of who's been my business partner around the journey, John Thompson, who's still at CHOP. We work very closely together, still share best practices and our experiences as he's continued to run technology and strategy at CHOP. I built a lot of great teams there and a lot of great connections. DEI is something that's very, very important to us. So Katie Miller, who's running DEI and that talent management group at CHOP, still very, very close. I keep in contact with what they're doing, which is phenomenal. We're going to steal shamelessly, I think, some of those ideas at Emory. So it's a long list of folks. And what I learned really, really critical was that vendors are partners. They're not just, and so obviously you've been incredibly giving and generous with your time, as well as Bill Tedesco and Donor Surge, and Nathan Chappelle. Shout out to them. Nathan with his great book, The Generosity Crisis. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say a special thank you to Chris Cannon too, at Zuri and all the great work he's done there. He's done assessments for me. And then when I left ASP, the marketing sponsorship committee, I was fortunate that I could get David Lawson, who's done a lot of incredible analytics work, to take over as the marketing. And so I really appreciate that. And now I'm in Atlanta, so I'd be remiss if I didn't say thanks to Dwight Dozer at Georgia Tech, who's been a mentor and who's been in this business for a very, very long time.
Also a fellow musician.
He's a drummer. My son started off as a drummer, so they've connected. So, again, a lot of us have these artsy these experiences. And so some of us are doing that hobby. Dwight is still playing the drums. He's still head of IT at the Georgia Tech Foundation. So we all keep a very close-knit group on the ASP board. Terry Callahan, who's recently announced her retirement at Rutgers. She's been an absolute joy. One of my first folks that I had on the board when I became president. So many names to mention. Sorry for anyone I didn't mention, but they've all been really inspirational on my journey. And I really am grateful for their friendship and for their great advice.
I love that. It must have been 2011 when I went to my first conference in Chicago, and I was that lost guy wandering around. And so many of the same names you referenced. There was a newcomer breakfast. I met Gail. I met Tom. So many people just genuinely welcomed me to the community. And it's obviously a little different when you're a vendor, although it really doesn't feel that different within that community. It has definitely felt more like a mutual partnership, which has been really, really appreciated.
I will tell you, Brad, just quickly that it's easy to drink the Kool-Aid when you have great people around. When you have a great product like ASP and great people around. I'd be remiss. When I was at Children's National, Anne-Marie Halsey was my director of internal stewardship, which essentially is, we've gotten the money, did you spend it? Yeah. And she then began to manage HR and budget, and she's at the Environmental Defense Fund, and now is on the board of ASP as a secretary. So it's a legacy of really hiring great people, building great teams, and giving them an opportunity. And if they have those opportunities, they're going to take hold of it and continue to move it forward. So, I
know we're coming up on time here, but speaking of hiring a great team, are you hiring? I know you've been doing a lot of team building at Emory. What are you excited about? And for folks listening, what should they keep an eye on as it relates to opportunities and how to connect with you?
Oh man, that's a whole podcast, Brett, by itself, but I'm going to make it quick. So we hired Mark Walcott, who is our AVP of Technology and Analytics. We are launching now our conversion from AWA, Advanced Web Access, now to Salesforce. So it's a tech transformation. There's this the core concept that we've done for the past 15, 17 years, both at the DC and CHOP, and we're bringing it to Emory, where we're calling it creating optimal records everywhere. So the core campaign, and essentially what that means is we're focusing on technology, reporting. It's a campaign so that the front line can understand their part in the tech transformation. And it really galvanizes as a concept because we all, as fundraisers, understand the concept of a campaign. So it's a tech transformational campaign. That's a concept that folks tend to gravitate to. So Mark is leading core through the CRM. We're doing project management into Right. So we're doing not only a CRM transformation or conversion, but we're also going into a project management environment using Right. So Mark has a lot of upcoming opportunities on his team. And then what I'm probably most excited about, because it's something that I haven't necessarily done at the level I think we're going to do it at Emory, is really pipeline optimization, which is really prospect research and prospect management. We were very, very fortunate to recently hire an executive director, Amy Begg, who comes to us from Harvard. She has been a fantastic partner. So she's totally transforming our team. She has assistant director positions. So those who may not have a lot of experience in prospect research and portfolio management, but are very interested in wealth analysis. We have those type of positions. We have a training position that's open, and then the director position that will really support international prospect research. There's so much wealth in the world that we're not really identifying and really optimizing. So she's really going to focus us there in this international prospect research position, as well as due diligence. And certainly we've seen in the news where we've had some really big donors encounter some significant challenges that could hurt their reputation, obviously, but the reputation of the institutions that they're giving to. So that's going to be something that's going to be significant, especially if you have a very, very strong principal gifts and transformational giving program. So really looking at prospect research and portfolio management, moving it from the traditional to now more of the wealth analysis, the analytics, and really developing business best practices on pipeline optimization, as we call it. So lots of great positions that are there and that are posted. So really looking for great team members and excited about the opportunity.
I love it. I love it, Shomari. Your energy, it's inspiring. I hope people take the opportunity to connect with you. I know you're active on LinkedIn. At least, if nothing else, you got to go see the 11 million viral video proud dad moment. I mean, you got to do that, and then reach out to Shomari and stay in touch. And I just wish you the absolute best in that role. We love collaborating with the mission that you all have down there, and look forward to good things to come.
Well, Brent, I really appreciate the opportunity to have this chat. It's good to see you. It's been a while. Hopefully you and family are doing well, and ever true. Obviously, you're doing well using and actually buying some products that we feel are really critical to our success, both on data, donor relations, engagement, all of those things are really being centralized and captured within your portfolio at Evertrue. So really thank you for the opportunity to talk and your partnership.
You bet. And look, I'm going to try to track down the AASP dates and figure out what a compelling duet opportunity might be. So we'll see. All right.
Yes, I'm going to hold you to that, man. I would love to do that with you for sure.
All right. All right. Well, with that, everybody, hope you enjoyed learning more about Shomari's journey. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Brent, closing today's episode with Shomari White, Senior Associate Vice President of Resource Advancement at Emory University. Take care, everybody.